Kevin, please tell us about PiSCES. What happens behind the scenes and what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So PiSCES stands for Providing Individualized Services and Care in Epilepsy. And basically, PiSCES is what's called an electronic patient portal. And it's been developed by researchers in the FutureNeuro Centre and RCSI in Dublin. Basically, with PiSCES then, people that have epilepsy and attend one of the national hospitals in Ireland that have access to the epilepsy electronic patient records. So people can access their patient portal records and they can do things like access their clinic letters, and they can access things that are like tools for patients to report their progress and outcomes. They can, communicate with their clinicians about their epilepsy care goals and questions they might have, or they can use it to prepare for their clinical appointments, and they can validate the content of their summary record. So in short, then the patient portal, the PiSCES patient portal, has been built on top of the National Epilepsy Electronic Healthcare Record. So clinicians in Ireland, like Maíre, who's on the call with us, use this electronic healthcare record in their daily business when they're, seeing their people with epilepsy or coming for their, whether it be an outpatient's appointment or a telephone call. They use the epilepsy electronic patient record. So I might ask Maíre just to talk a little bit about the development of the epilepsy electronic patient record. And that's been developed over the years, an ethnographic process where clinicians and different allied health professionals have had input into the co-development of that system. Maíre, would you like to speak a little bit about that?
Okay, so thanks, Kevin. The epilepsy electronic patient record, well, I work in a big hospital in Dublin, and it's for epilepsy care, it's really how we do our business now. And as Kevin says, this was developed many years ago, but everybody was involved in it. It was, the doctors, the nurses, everybody input into the development of this, into the epilepsy electronic patient record, so that it became, a really usable tool. Where it started off as research and development. It's now in use every single solitary day in our hospital, and as Kevin said, in hospitals around the country. So first of all, from the clinician point of view, when we see somebody in the outpatient clinic, we have all of their information on the electronic record. Patients often get very fed up when they come into a hospital and they're asked time and time again by the, same different doctors, different nurses, what medications are you taking? How many, what's the side effects, So we have all of that for them, a complete summary, and we have it all there in front of them. So I think it gives the patients confidence in people who are delivering their care.
Yeah.
And we use it not just for the outpatients, we use it for the telephone advice line, which is, provides a continuity of care between the outpatient appointments when patients phone in. We have all the information at our fingertips. We can make changes. And it's very comforting, I think, for patients. Well, it's very comforting for me. We don't have the electronic patient record, we're like, oh my God, how did we live without this? So,
yeah, and they can update their record themselves, right?
They can't update their record with the portal. What they have is the portal is a view into their record. So they can look at their record and they can validate the information, which is so important, because in hospitals, things get, there's errors in hospital charts, there's errors, and patients are the very best people. They're out there and they can look and they can say, no, I wasn't on that tablet, or I didn't have that side effect of that medication. That's really important information, and family history and all of the things that are so important to us as clinicians. Patients and their families are the people to validate this record. So they can send us a direct message, a secure message, which allows, gives us a message and tells us there's an error, and then we can update the record.
Perfect. That sounds very, sort of like really quite reassuring for patients and carers, in fact.
Yeah. I hope so. It's certainly reassuring for us as clinicians, and I think it makes our care much more comprehensive, and I always feel when somebody comes into the outpatient appointment, there's only a certain amount of time and they only have 1 or 2, maybe 3 visits a year. And you want to, you want to get the best bang for your buck, So you use your portal, and if you, beforehand, if you look at the question part of it, if you prepare for your appointment, in that case, then, you all the simple stuff maybe that you can get out, from the generic questions, you might have sorted that yourself. And then you can come in with your list of questions that's really specific and important to you, and not the clinician. And I think that's really important, preparation. And then afterwards, looking at your clinic letter and validating it and saying, yeah, that's what we discussed. And it's an aid memoir if you review your letter and say, oh, yeah, she told me to have a blood test done in 3 weeks' time, those kind of things.
That's brilliant. So Tell me, how are things going to be developed further? Like, I mean, maybe Kevin can answer this, or I don't know who's going to be answering this question specifically, but how are things going to be taken from today? What's going to be happening going forward?
Yeah, so I think Maíre gave it really good, some kind of concrete examples of how people can use the patient portal in the real world. So we recruited about 72 people with epilepsy, about 18 of their associated care partners. So that could be a sibling, it could be a mum or a dad, it could be a husband or a wife. What we did was we looked at different cohorts of patients and different cohorts of clinicians. And some of those were given access, as Maíre was talking about, to their clinic letter. They read through their clinic letter and they were looking at to see, what they value about that. Did they find anything that didn't make sense to them, or is there anything that could be improved there? And then there was other cohorts of patients, people that have a vagal nerve stimulator implant. So that's an implant that helps to hopefully improve their seizure response, or people that are on, for example, that are on the ketogenic diet and have been using the patient portal to communicate with their clinical dietitian. And there's a lot of experience there from the people we've done our research with. We were, doing things like surveys, focus groups, interviews, and all the rest. And I might actually ask Sue for a bit of her experience around having access to the patient portal and what she valued about that. Sue looked at things like the EPR summary module. So that was medications, seizure types, investigations. Sue would have had access to the clinic letters that were produced after the appointments. And, Sue's been very active with us in our research. So I think it's good to hear from Sue about this.
Thanks, Kevin. So my son is 23 and he's had quite a difficult epilepsy. He's been on a lot of medication. He has the VNS, which is very successful. And I found in 2011, he went through a really bad period where he was in and out of hospital quite a lot. And, in normal times when everyone's well, you can remember things. You can remember when he had his last seizure. What did it look like? But when you're in panic mode, everything goes out the window. And I had 3 notepads with different notes on it. And so I went from the notepads to an app on my phone. And I found that really helpful because I could pull it up and I could say, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. And then I met Kevin and Kevin showed me this. And I was going, oh my God, this is very technical. But little by little, it made sense, for me in particular, because myself and my son's now 23. So I want us both to look after his epilepsy, and for him to take ownership. So it's great to go in there. As Maíre said, sometimes you come out of an appointment and a lot has been said and you're still digesting it. And I have epilepsy as well. So it's vump, Whereas
it kind of goes over your head a bit, doesn't it? Like some of it, like, yeah.
Or what did they say? When do I have to have my bloods done? So I can go back in and go, yeah, he needs to have his bloods done, or when will his battery potentially be running out? I need to check in. And in my world, I would love the portal to be open to us for everything to do with Bobby's epilepsy and other care to go in there, like his blood tests, his EEGs, his VNS, his medications, his appointments, maybe a section for seizure activity for parents or caregivers and people with epilepsy to be able to input as they go along. And also maybe a section for, we're with St. James's and we email the nurse if we're having difficulty or if we have a question, and they tend to ring us back. So in the portal, if there was a section there that you could, instead of going scrambling for your emails, I think it's amazing. I think it's a brilliant idea. And I'm really hoping it takes off. And I remember going to a talk Maíre was at once, and she said, this is your information. Why wouldn't you guys have access to it? Because for years we felt like we were being minded, and it was, it was the doctor's stuff, and it wasn't. Whereas if people with conditions feel like co-carers or then they won't become patients. They'll manage their own conditions. We won't feel like we're dependent. I feel that.
Yeah, it's like quite empowering, I think.
It really is, yeah.
Both patients or people with epilepsy and their carers, or just loved ones really, access to their information. So also you guys know how to support the one that you love and care for, as well as the person with epilepsy being able to care for themselves better. And then in addition, of course, as you were saying before, there's the issue, say somebody's in hospital and it's just panic mode. Also, most of us have issues with our memory anyway. So it's just great to have like little reminders or have things right there in front of you. Okay, that's what we need to do. Or even reminders to contact neurologist or epilepsy nurse when necessary, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So can you or the right person please tell me about what is the ongoing research into this? What is likely to happen in the future? I mean, Kevin, do you know the answer to that?
Well, I mean, for us and the patient portal research, it's for the last number of years, this has been very much a research project. So it's in the confines of research. And this is now, from the findings of our research, it's pointed to the fact that there's a want from patients and carers for this patient portal technology, and clinicians are, I would say, cautiously positive. The patient portal I think it has a lot more for patients and carers to be just enthusiastic and positive about, whereas clinicians, it brings in a change to their work process, and clinicians are already stretched, and especially, with COVID-19, things have been changing so rapidly over the last 12 months. So I suppose where the patient portal stuff is going is that we're trying to push this from research to clinical implementation. And the clinicians then, that moves it out of the closely guarded research context. I'd actually like to ask Maíre, what are your perceptions or your thoughts on how would this change your work if tomorrow everyone was using the patient portal? How would this impact you guys as clinicians?
I think if everybody started using it, it could be quite challenging. But I think in the EPR, we have always done something in kind of an initiative way, and we have, done things slowly. And that's been the success of the electronic patient record. And when we rolled out module after module, I do think the future is that every patient should have access to the record. Yes, it would change the way we do our business, and we would have to just maybe change our work processes rather than anything else. But I think the idea of, patients, not professional patients, that's the wrong word, knowledgeable patients, expert patients, an expert patient coming into you, having reviewed their information before they come in, their questions ready, and not spending your allotted 15 or 20 minutes getting that information. I think can only be of benefit. And, not taking medication for a chronic condition is a challenge, and compliance is a challenge. But I think when patients are working together with the clinicians, they don't feel like Sue says that it's a paternalistic approach coming down. It's a shared care. And that's the way it should be. The whole thing, nothing without you, nothing about you without you. And that's really where the portal is. That's what I think the portal is. It's your record. It's about you. Yes, it would change our processes. Yes, we would all have to adapt a little bit. But, I think it's for the better.
And I also think that it could potentially make your job more maybe enabled to look after or treat the person with epilepsy more effectively, because the more information provided by them to you, I think, could make you more productive, if that's the word. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And you could address the things that are really important, because sometimes patients come into the clinic and the only thing they're asked about is the medications and the seizures. And the other important things like planning a pregnancy, how's school going, what's your mood like? All of these really important things aren't addressed sometimes because there's no time, because you spend your time trying to figure out, is it 300 or 400 milligrams and what the seizure in December, or so sometimes I definitely think prepared patients make the encounter easier, better for the patient, better for the clinician, much more rewarding to work with the patient. I think it's really rewarding to work with a patient and not having this kind of top-down approach.
And then that would also, I imagine, maybe I'm just reaching out a bit here, but decrease, I imagine, a person's risk of SUDEP because their epilepsy is likely to be better controlled. Could improve their mental health as well. If, for instance, and this is a personal thing for me, like when I last saw my neurologist in advance, I was like, I need a referral to psychiatry, a neuropsychiatrist, or something like that, because mental health issues. But I tell you what, I bet if I'd gone to the appointment without preparing that, I might have forgotten. And so I imagine with this app, or the device, the whole system, to enable more patients to do that would just be wonderful.
Sometimes the most important issue that you say just before you walk out the door. So So if you're prepared for the appointment, you're getting more value from your appointment. And that's what it's all about, getting best value.
Totally. So, Mary, can you tell us about your involvement in all of this, please? And how do you contribute?
So I've been, I suppose, with the whole epilepsy, what we call kind of e-health work since the beginning, going back, sadly, nearly 20 years. It's frightening in one way, but great in another way. So Maura and I have worked together on this for a long time. And then Kevin's been involved for the last few years, and I've been able to meet people like Sue and work together. But I suppose just to go back to the very beginning of our kind of whole e-health endeavor, we kind of, a group of us got together and saw the value that, like in every other part of our lives, we do everything electronically now, whether we like it or not. And a lot of it's very good. Some of it's annoying and all that kind of thing. But for example, we book online if we're going on holidays, if we ever go on holidays again. But we do our banking, or we order things online and they get delivered to our door. So we're very aware of that in other aspects of our lives. And what some of us who are working in the epilepsy group back nearly 20 years ago kind of came to realize is that, often somebody starts their journey with their epilepsy condition, let's say in a remote part of Ireland, for example, and for a variety of reasons, years later, ends up in a centre like Beaumont Hospital being considered for epilepsy surgery and have taken a route all around the world to get there. And the same information about them is not available to everybody. So that's where our electronic patient record idea came in, that if everybody involved in a patient's care had access to the same information, how that would help in the continuity of care. And way back at the beginning, we also had an interest in the idea that at some point we'd like to give people with epilepsy access to their own record so that they could really play a role in being a member of the clinical care team, that it wasn't just a thing that, as Maura's just said, they come in and things are done, that they actually are playing a role. So that's been happening now in the last few years that we're getting there now. I suppose my role in all of this is that I have a background in electromedical equipment and technology in supporting healthcare. I'm by profession a medical physicist, but I've gone down a route of sort of e-health technologies. And I suppose my interest really is that we shouldn't ever minimize these solutions to being a technology solution. There's so much involved in the kind of people who are involved in the processes. So you asked, Kevin, about where are we going next. I think we've learned a huge amount in the project that we've been doing in the last couple of years from people like Sue and Maura. And now if we want to kind of implement this clinically, moving forward, there's a lot to be thought about in terms of the rules and regulations around how the technology is managed, who's going to manage it, how do we ensure that the appropriate people get an account to their portal, and how do they get ongoing support. So that my role is really in understanding all those people and process things and trying to pull that all together. So I work very closely then with Kevin on that, I suppose in the background somewhere, but it's really rewarding work, and it's great to hear what Maura and Sue are saying about the technology and how it supports both of their roles. So that's where I fit in.
Wonderful. And so COVID-19 time, has the past year actually been a time for your work to almost flourish in a way, or for more people to appreciate what you're doing, because we've been more isolated and we're not leaving the house, ideally?
Maybe I could just quickly address that, and then, but Maura and Sue might have a role in that, or thoughts on that is what I mean. I suppose what's been really interesting is that overnight, when COVID set in the healthcare situation, not just in epilepsy care, but across the board, because of the need for social distancing and not allowing people, let's say, to come into hospital settings that didn't need to be there. Overnight, healthcare services started to deliver services remotely by telephone or video, like we're doing here, video conferencing. And prior to that, people were understandably nervous of maybe delivering services in that remote way. But because of COVID, now people have learned, well, actually, in some situations, this really works. And in actual fact, it mightn't be ideal for everything. And nobody's saying that we should never see each other face to face again. But for some situations, it really works well. And it means that, it can actually support a more kind of equitable service delivery, even to people in remote settings, if we can get this right. So the learning through COVID has been very beneficial to us. And I suppose because we were on the journey with our patient portal, we see how something like a patient portal could really support that business of remote care. So I think it's, as you've just said, Tori, it's been challenging through COVID. It's also taught us a lot, you know. So I don't know more, Sue, would you like to say anything about the COVID kind of situation and how it would influence our work?
I just think we moved seamlessly from kind of face-to-face encounters to telephone calls with the EPR. We had an infrastructure there, and literally there was no change in our delivery. I don't mean there was no change. There's no change in the amount of patients that we saw. Full clinics, we're still seeing full clinics, or doing full clinics on the phone. We had the infrastructure there, so we moved very, very quickly to it. And it's been beneficial for a lot of patients who don't have to take a day off work to come to an appointment. You know, shared care, or not shared delivery of care, I think probably would be the way forward. We would see people, and when they're happy, they might move over to telecare. It makes such sense for people with a chronic condition, you know, that they have all this, and they have the portal to prepare for their appointment, and they're invested in it. So, but Sue, I think, probably is on the receiving end of it, so she's probably the best person to ask.
What do you think then, Sue?
I can only see positives. Well, for the moment, initially, I went to a focus group once, and one of the neurologists said he could definitely see a benefit from patients not attending hospitals as much, or from having your appointment over online. And I initially was like, oh my God, no, we have to sit in front of him, we have to tell him everything. And Kevin did a virtual appointment with us as part of this thing. And, you know, Bobby had to go online and look at his checklist and looked at the questions, and he came up with his own questions. And it was really, really good. And then lo and behold, COVID came, and the hospital rang us and said, you will be having a phone call. And it didn't put the fear of God into me, because we sat down, we got our questions, and, you know, it was brilliant. It wasn't a short one. We had whatever amount of time, but we covered absolutely everything.
Okay.
And another thing, I think, like, my son now is a little bit different. Like, he's a chronic illness, but I really think Bobby has a condition. He's not unwell. And I think the more time you spend in hospitals, you come away feeling you are unwell. You know, I have to go into a hospital, whereas I don't want to be in a hospital. I don't want him in a hospital unless he really needs to be there. And the fact that Bobby sat down at a laptop or on the phone and answered his own questions and went through, it was just so good. It was like empowering. It really was. And I'm so happy. Yeah. And yeah. So yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah.
Do you miss, because I think, I'm just thinking about other questions from other people. They really, really appreciate face-to-face. And I don't know if, like, we have hormones popping out or something, and people can read your body language a bit more. What do you think about that, and that potentially being missed?
I think we had phone calls. So I think definitely a video conference. I would prefer a video conference. Yeah. But apart from that, no, I would prefer to see care in the community, to be completely honest. I really don't want to be going into a hospital. So yeah, that's the difference for me.
And I guess that goes back to what Maíre was saying. We kind of need to have a combination of online, and then sometimes you do need to see your neurologist face to face. You just have to. And I suppose certain people are just not into IT at all, and they'll just be like, no, and that's okay. I think that's all right. We're not going to disregard people's needs, really. Some people, like, for instance, get anxious using it. I have a friend who's partially blind, and she's a bit pants on her phone, really. And so I think she would, like, really appreciate going in to see her neurologist face to face. But I mean, do you want to elaborate on that, Kevin? I mean, do you think that we need to be sure to have that balance?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's also about preferences, you know.
Sure.
So some people, from our experience of trying to recruit people, you know, we asked, you know, we recruited 72 people with epilepsy and 18 care partners, but we asked a lot more than that to be part of the research. And, you know, some people some people just weren't into technology. They didn't really use their phone, or, you know, there's a whole host of reasons why people might not want to use this particular technology. But for those people, there should be in clinic, there should be, you know, there's face-to-face appointments, and I suppose there's the other ways that they can receive their care. But I suppose then it's about preferences, and I suppose the more that people get used to accessing a system like this, and doing their care, their appointments that way, that can only kind of grow and get more efficient and improve. And also, I suppose if you can, like as Sue was talking earlier on about wanting to be able to contact her service through a patient portal, if things like that can be enhanced in the future in the patient portal, that can make it more appealing system for people who want to use it. They can do more things with it, whereas before they might have to contact their service over the phone or by email or letter to ask for something like their last appointment letter, their GP letter. Now they can just go online, access the patient portal, download the letter, and there you have it. And I suppose it's little things like that to just make your life a bit easier, that maybe
and less stressful, which is great with epilepsy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just, take away the reliance on memory and stuff like that. So I think it is about preferences, and, different cohorts of people and patients and carers will have different opinions on that, but it's there for the people who want to use it.
I think what's quite reassuring, actually, and I think many, if not the majority of people are unaware of, is the years of work that have gone into producing this so far. Like Maíre was saying, you've been doing this for so long that it's not like something that's just been created, something scary. It's a lot of thought has gone into decisions made already from many different sources. And I think that that's reassuring. What do you think, Maíre?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the success of any of these kind of initiatives really requires a lot of different stakeholders. And I know some people don't like that word, but different perspectives. It really does. And I think Kevin and Sue were just talking there, about the whole idea of nowadays kind of the concept of co-design is quite a buzzword, but actually it's really meaningful, because to get this right, we need input from the people who use epilepsy services, for example, to understand what their world is like and how does technology either support that or inhibit that or whatever. And then you've obviously the clinicians' involvement, and there's a range of clinicians. Then you have to have people that are involved in kind of healthcare policy and management, because you have to understand the legal and regulatory aspects of what we're trying to do. So long before there was GDPR, I'd say Maura White and myself are probably privacy experts in terms of we were very aware of how an electronic health record brings all these kind of data privacy issues into play. So we were really engaging with data privacy experts way back when. And then you've kind of, as I say, healthcare policy, you've got computer scientists, because maybe we've an idea about how the technology can do something, and then they can advise us on how it will. So everybody has to be part of the story. So that's why it takes a long time, but it's also why it should take a long time, if you know what I mean, because you have to bring all of those things together. And just to go back to a question that you asked, Tori, about where we're at with the portal project. So our portal work will take another significant amount of time, because we've a lot to, if you like, get right about it, understand all the different players that I've just mentioned there and their perspectives, and bring those into the mix in terms of bringing it into the clinical service. But you're absolutely right. It does require all those kind of various perspectives to come into the mix and work together, by the way. Learn from each other and work together.
Yeah, and just I was thinking one more thing. Security is something that people tend to be very worried about. Who's going to access my data? Who's going to hack into the system? How can you reassure people that that's not going to happen, that there aren't going to be hackers and stuff?
So I suppose, first of all, from a technology point of view, all of the technology is built in such a way that there's lots of privacy protecting aspects to the technology. Now, that doesn't mean that something couldn't go wrong or anything like that. But for example, with the portal, you have to have two-factor authentication of who's logging on. And that, even before somebody is given an account, they have to agree to certain ways of using the account and have to be, if you like, authenticated and authorized. And the same with the epilepsy electronic patient record. So there's kind of technology that protects that. Then there are governance rules that have to protect that as well. So, so there's rules around who can access and when they can access it and where they can access it. And then as well, there would be regular vulnerability testing of the system. In other words, in technology world, people talk about penetration testing. So for example, in the background, the IT people would regularly test how safe and secure the system is and actually try to hack in. I'm not just talking about the epilepsy system, but that's what happens in the background of all sorts of IT technology, where they'd actually test it very regularly to see, can it be broken into? Is it secure? There's a lot of work goes on into exactly what you're talking about, making sure that only the people who have authority and are authenticated can use the system, and then all the rules around that make sure that we avoid and minimize the potential of any breaches or anything like that. Yeah.
Cool. That's reassuring. Okay, so we're kind of coming to the end now, but is there anything that anybody would like to add? And if there is something that we don't have time for, we can always go on and do another podcast. But what else now? What else would you like to include, if any? Kevin?
Yeah, I suppose Mary talked about the importance of the kind of the governance and getting the regulations right, so that's a big part of the next phase. And as Mary was saying, this won't happen overnight. Like, you don't just turn around tomorrow and that the patient portal will be used for all patients in Ireland, epilepsy patients.
You're going to have us lot jealous on the other side of the water, How long do you think it will take?
How long's a piece of string?
Oh, man. We want to manage people's expectations,
I think it's kind of, it depends on the clinical services and how they're able to handle it. I think what we have done is we have a group of patients, a group of carers, a group of people with epilepsy that have used this. We have a group of clinicians that have used the patient portal. They see the value in it. So they're kind of ready for a soft launch to start using this in the clinical world, if that is what the clinical world wants. So I think we've put together a nice group that we can go back to in the future and, develop this more and enhance it and try to get the regulatory stuff and governance stuff right. Yeah, I'm cautiously positive about it. And as you were saying there, people will be getting jealous. It's part of this research is that other systems then, can see what we're doing, and we can look what they're doing, and we can say, right, we've done this is where we've got to, and we can learn from them and they can learn from us. So if other people are seeing this research and think it's a good thing and think they can learn from it, that's part of the whole reason for doing it as well.
Wonderful. It really makes me think of how nations and large, normally competitive organizations came together for COVID. And we got these vaccinations and we are saving so many lives as a result. And I personally think, which you just pretty much said yourself, if we can get more and more people from different nations working together rather than just competing all the time, we are going to better the lives of so many people literally in the world more quickly as well.
You're giving us that soapbox, Tori, so thanks very much.
No worries at all. So,
just say one thing. Sorry, Tori. I just want to say this. I feel there's tremendous potential with the portal, tremendous potential. But I think what's really important is that patient power also drives it. And the patient group and the patient users ask for this, want this, and talk about it, and make other patients want it as well. Because, the health service may listen to the patients more than they listen to the clinicians. So I really think patient power is really important to drive this, and for the epilepsy associations to champion this and to be, talking about it so that the health service has to respond.
So, okay, I think it's a brilliant point, actually, personally. So how do, to me, as a patient, it feels like, generally speaking for people, it is easier for epilepsy organisations to have influence on the government rather than individual patients. So how would you suggest that patients are able to have the influence they want to?
Well, I suppose it's linking in and being part, and I know Epilepsy Ireland has been very supportive of this project from the very beginning and is involved, and I'm not sure if Mary would know more of that, but I think it's using Epilepsy Ireland to drive it, to champion it for patients. Maybe that's a bit fluffy now, but for patients to talk to their organisation and ask, why can't we have this? Why aren't they using it? What can you do to make the clinicians use that? What can you do to change health policy that patients have access to their records? And the EPR has always, epilepsy is a chronic disease, and there's so much learning for other chronic diseases from the epilepsy EPR and the portal. So it's not just epilepsy here. I feel the potential is huge for all chronic conditions.
Fabulous.
Just to add to that because it's really important. I think what Maura's just said is really, really exactly right. But interestingly, just Tori, the project that we're working on, the research project, was funded by the Health Research Board in Ireland and also co-funded by Epilepsy Ireland, the Department of Health, and our Health Service Executive. And the reason there's that model of funding for this particular project is to do with this idea of what they call knowledge transfer or knowledge users. So the idea is that the researchers, like what we've just described to you, do whatever project, but that they bring those knowledge users into the mix, like the Department of Health, which is in charge of setting policy, like the Health Service Executive that's in charge of actually delivering healthcare, and like Epilepsy Ireland, who is a voice for people with epilepsy in the country, so that they become, by being part of the project and being funders of the project, they also take some of the output of the project to influence how do we actually bring this to the next stage. So we're hoping that that model of funding the project will actually influence how the learning from this project is taken forward.
I just think it all sounds really, really exciting. And that's the message we need to get out to everybody. And sometimes actually remind us lot with epilepsy, because there are so many negative things that happen. And you're just like, it's lovely to hear something uplifting and be reminded, because we might forget. So yes, I think everybody should be speaking then to Epilepsy Ireland, saying how we support your work and appreciate it, and have, basically a voice with the government and the health service, and say, this is going to better so many people's lives, make people's careers more fulfilling, I imagine, and just as cheesy as it is, make the world a better place. That's what we need. Yeah, we need that hope. So thank you so much, everybody. It's been absolutely delightful to speak to all of you. If anybody wants to get hold of you, I will provide links to your profiles, if that's okay. You can send me email addresses if you want. If not, that's fine. I know that, Kevin, we were going to bring your details in if people could go through yourself, if that's what everybody else would like. And no doubt we'll hear from you guys again. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tori.
Thanks, Tori.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.